Are we live? All right, I think we're live. You guys there? What's going on? Bass guitarist. What the? Elijah. When are you starting? We're starting now. We're live. Boys Outdoors. What's up, buddy? So yeah, tonight, you guys can actually call in. There's a number right there at the bottom. You guys can call and we'll answer your questions live on the channel. I did this 5T Outdoors. What's up, buddy? Frank, hey buddy, I'm Frank from Staten. What's going on? I did this, I think it was last year, maybe a little bit over a year ago. I started answering, I started doing phone calls and stuff, and then a bunch of people called. It was doing pretty good, and then I kind of got away from it. And then I think I did one maybe like 6 months ago or so. And then we're going to try it again tonight. And you don't have to call if you don't want. You can just comment, your questions, any question that you may have, food plot related, hunting, say what's up, whatever you guys want to do. But I figured, since it's been so long since I've done this, to go live for an hour or so and just kind of catch up with you guys and maybe talk about some habitat improvements you're working on, some goals. I always like writing down goals and stuff that I like to work on for the new year, new properties, search for new properties, whatever it may be. And that's what I'm currently doing, and gathering some new land. This week I start land consulting. I'll be on the road for like 16 weeks, 14, 16 weeks. And I'll be busy. The phone has been blowing up. Took some calls yesterday, today. People wanted to book. Some guys are already booking for next year, so it's pretty crazy. But yeah, if you guys want to call, you can call that number there. We've got some questions. Let's see. Wisconsin. Your name's Dave. What's up, buddy? Frank from Staten Island. What's up, brother? Western North Carolina in the house. You're probably one of the best down-to-earth, honest guys on YouTube. Really refreshing to see. Steel Panther, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. I try to always keep it real with you guys. Appreciate that comment. Frank, look to get deer near my area. More December is all over. Yeah, I mean, this time of year is kind of, if you're not hunting, private land or something that hasn't been, pressured, this time of year could be some tough hunting to try to get, deer in the area. You lost a lot of weight from your older videos. Look good, bro. Keep it up. Thanks, man. I think I lost 45 pounds or so over, it was like a year's time. I kind of fluctuate about like 5 pounds or so, but I don't want to lose any more than I have. So I kind of just maintain where I'm at right now. Kentucky bucks. I have oaks spread out over my 90 acres. Would you recommend thinning them to 1 or 2 spots? Yeah, I would take a look through there and maybe first assess the ground situation. If look at those oaks, are they shading out the ground to where you have no browse coming up at ground level for deer? If you look up, you have a closed canopy forest, then I would thin some out, take out some of the bigger mature trees, crooked ones, whatever, and you can get some money for them. You just drop them, whatever you want to do. But you have to figure out what your goal is. If you're, obviously when you do that, you open up the sunlight, you're going to take out the higher canopy ones. You're going to allow more sunlight to get to the smaller oaks and allow them to produce more acorns. But you'll also, in return, you'll get more ground cover, more sunlight to the ground and get more browse growing. A lot of woody browse, forbs, and grasses, and whatever's in that seed bank is going to grow from that sunlight. So it's kind of two benefits. You'll get more sunlight to the trees that are being shaded out. Those younger trees will start producing acorns, and then you'll also get the woody browse part. Also look at it as, you don't want to take that entire 90 acres and probably thin that whole thing out. If that's all you have to work with, maybe take a portion of that, like a 5-acre chunk or something, and, create bedding, or, do a bigger chunk, 20 acres or something, and do more like a select cut, so you can create all that fresh browse. And, if food is your limiting factor on your property, then I would thin a higher percentage of those trees so you get more food growing, because acorns are a great attraction, but they're limited. They're only for a couple months, so you need food year round. So look at that as well. What's up, Josh? Hey, did I need to hack and squirt those trees on the north and south and drop trees back towards them, or just drop the others? Josh, I'll have to look at the map again, the printout, and see. I don't remember 100%, but I don't think you needed to hack and squirt any trees. I didn't figure that in for you. Dropping them would I think was your plan there. But I'll get with you. Message me after this is over. Text me, and I'll look at your print. What's next? Garage. I have 80 acres. I cleared approximately 3 for food. Going to see Clover over the whole thing. Question is, what do you think of hinge cutting around the food plots to increase daytime movement? Yeah, you can do that. That would be kind of like a edge feathering a little bit, to where you're dropping those trees back in the woods, hinging them out the tops toward the field. When you do that, you stagger that edge. Is not a smooth edge between field and the woods line. You drop them out in different lengths, and back into the woods, even into the field a little bit. You just create that jagged edge, and that'll increase daytime movement as well for deer, bucks, and does. Also with that, when you drop those tops down, you'll allow more sunlight in. You'll get more grasses and browse growing up through. Birds are landing those tops. Birds will poop down through those tops. You'll get a lot of bushes and briars coming up. Whatever the birds are eating in your area, it'll grow up through them tops. You could do that as well. You could, you can hinge cut them or drop them. I would personally not hinge them. Depends, really. I would most likely just cut that tree all together and just drop that tree 100%. That's just me. Sometimes you might be able to hinge cut them around the edge. Just really depends. Most time you'll probably just end up cutting them completely, and do it that way. Kyle Moore, what's up, buddy? Can I plant peas with winter wheat and winter rye? Yeah, plant the peas and wheat and rye all together. Be perfectly fine. What state is that in, Kyle? Where are you located? Hunting Repressing, what's up, buddy? Hey, Dave, great to see you. What's hunting and stuff with J&J? What's up, man? Starting Tradition Outdoors, what's up, buddy? Brian, I love to add minerals to my soil in the winter time. My goal is to help reduce a buck's recovery time. Then use a small amount of fertilizer in springtime, about 2 weeks before I till my fall blend. There you go. Sounds like a good plan. Boyd's Outdoors. Hey, Whitetail Session Outdoors. Love the vids. I've been seeing mainly big groups of does on my land. Not many bucks. What can I do to bring in more mature bucks? Mature bucks need security. So if you're referring to whether you're seeing them in big open fields, things like that, bucks do not like to come into big open fields. The smaller the field, to where, say, you have a food plot or you have some sort of screening around the food plot, what we just talked about, earlier. I can't remember who asked, but you can feather, edge feather the sides of the field. Just create a jagged edge. You can do screening in that food plot. You may not have browse on your property to attract bucks. You may be overpressuring them. See, the thing with this time of year, especially with bucks, is they need security. Like if you constantly push the bucks, they're going to just go off your property and they're going to go someplace else where they're not pressured. It's bucks are finicky. Does, you can push them whatever you want. You ride a four-wheeler, it doesn't really matter. They'll just stay right there, stick right there. And it really depends on the area too, because if you're in a higher pressure area or something, or an area that those deer are used to seeing, like four-wheelers or people or something like that, it's a little bit more forgiving. But pressure to those big mature bucks is the main thing why they leave your land, besides having quality food and things like that. But the bigger bucks, you can't bump them. That's why I got a video coming out this week on the 3 best times to kill a big buck, because that's what the normal average hunter has to work with, is those high pressure areas. And this time of year, like even end of November, December, January, I get the same questions. Hey, all the bucks are gone off my property. They're all nocturnal. What the heck do I do? What's going on? And it's the same question over and over and over. And there's a lot of factors, but the main thing is the deer have been hunted all season. The bucks are pressured, they're wore out, and they don't want to see people anymore. So, and this time of year too is areas you get a lot of snow. There's no food above the snow level. Deer have, they got to seek out that food. So, you just kind of have to assess your property and figure out what I just said. What are you lacking? Is there too much pressure? Not enough food? And then obviously now is the time to start making those changes. Hunting with Preston need help deciding what to plant this spring. Preston, I mean, you can plant clovers. You could do buckwheat. If you're in, you have a bigger plot or something, you could do, I think you're down in Georgia. You could do cowpeas, or buckwheat will be good if you have a large enough area. But there's a lot of options that you could go with. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Dave, don't think my first question was clear. If you had mature oaks around property and some in isolated bedding areas, would you keep those oaks or make deer come out? I would keep them there. I would let those deer, bed in those areas, because, acorns are they're not easy to digest. So that's why, like, a green food source is always going to be your go-to, with attracting deer, because it's high in moisture content. So a lot of times when deer bed, especially during like October or something, they may be, if it's warm, they might be in those oaks or in a situation where they're not getting up far to move, because it's hot or whatever, pressure. So they might be getting up maybe 50 yards, 100 yards, moving, nibbling on some acorns, some woody browse and things. And then by the afternoon feeding, they need some moisture content. So they might hit a water source or hit that green food source. So, you got to have a balance within those oaks, but I wouldn't remove them all. I would leave them in the bedding areas, and go that route. Then leave the tree lay. Okay, sounds good. I'll be trying that this winter. Yeah, you can definitely do that. Leave the tree lay. You don't want to eliminate it. Not all of them. You don't want, if you're still listening, you don't want to drop like every tree, boom, 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 straight across that field. Say you want to drop a tree here at a certain length out into the field. go 10 yards, drop another tree that may be a little bit further out or further in, go another 10 yards, 15 yards, drop another tree. Just make that edge to where it's staggered, back and forth a little bit. That way it's not a smooth field to where you have the field and then the woods line just make it jagged, because for many reasons deer don't like that smooth edge. But when rut time comes around, if you have that jagged edge like that, the deer, if the buck comes out, say he comes out to the edge of the field and he turns left and all he sees is a tree, falling down tree there, he can't see across that, especially when you get that browse and stuff. Here's your treetop. You get that browse that goes up through like that. They can't see through that, so they have to work their way around. I do this a lot with Egyptian wheat screening. If I have a screen in a field and I want to direct a deer, say past my bow stand, I'll cut a path out in that Egyptian wheat. And a lot of times that works during the rut because I think on a video last year or something, this was a decent 8-pointer come out of the bedding into the field, right? And he was walking along the edge of an Egyptian wheat screen incognito. And I had a path cut out in that screen right past my bow stand. The whole time he was following that screen down, he was looking through the screen to try to see what was on the inside, because it was a Brassica food plot in there. He could not see, and he was determined to know what was in there. He came down all the way down that edge, and he literally turned right through that cutout. He went into the food plot, and he turned right, he turned left, and he glanced around. He was so curious what was inside of that food plot. He had to know, and he came right to that cutout, and I could have shot it, but it just wasn't one I was really after. But yeah, it's a good way to do it. You don't want them to see easily. Steel Panther, I would like to plant a spring/summer fall food plot. What do you recommend I plant in my neck of the woods? Where are you at again? Steel Panther, what state are you in? If I plant in spring, what should I do in fall? Planting annuals, is good. You could do, annual clovers in the spring. Buckwheat, kind of, work on that soil in the springtime. And then in the fall, it really depends, what state you're in, how big the plot is. Is it a destination field? Is it just a little small kill plot? There's a lot of options, but typically on those really, really small food plots, me personally, I like to use winter wheat because, a deer can't wipe out a winter wheat field. You can have many deer in there as you want. They're not going to wipe out a winter wheat field. They can sit there and just sit there and, bite it, chew, and it's just going to continue to grow. A Brassica food plot, for instance, can be wiped out fast. That's probably one of the biggest fails in the food plot world with hunters, especially on small food plots, is planting Brassicas, because by the time they plant them, hunting season rolls around. By November, they have no food, because typically, unless you're using hybrid Brassicas or something, even then, it can only handle so much. A deer takes a bite of that Brassica, it's not growing back, right? So if you're hunting, you have a little 1/4 acre Brassica food plot. Everybody wants to plant Brassicas because it's a ice cream crop. So if you're planting the Brassicas in a 1/4 acre food plot, you get 2, 3, 4 deer in there for a couple of days. That plot's gonna be wiped out. You're not gonna have no food left. So a better option for that situation in those really, really small food plots is winter wheat. You can even add some, clovers in there. That way all that stuff comes back up in the springtime the following year. But it's a great option to do is winter wheat. It's underrated because people just, it's just winter wheat. All you hear about is Brassicas. People planting Brassicas, all these different types of varieties of Brassicas and radishes and, purple top turnips and rutabaga and all these things. That's all people talk about because it's like I said, it's the glamour crop of food plots. But it doesn't, just because that's out there, that's what it's called, doesn't mean that you need to plant it. Just because one person does something, plant something, doesn't mean it's best for your situation. I'm sorry. I'm getting these questions, guys. I'm sorry. All right. To be logged. 23. Mix is mature. Maple ash and aspen. I have a stand location where I don't want aspen to regenerate. Regeneration girdle. What time of year? You can do. What's that? You could do. If you don't want it to regenerate, you can use herbicides. There's a lot of herbicides you can use for that. Girdling. I mean, even if you girdle a tree, a lot of times that tree still won't die. And there was actually a good podcast that came out about this. I can't remember who it was from, but they were talking about that. Girdling trees is a lot of times, people say, oh, you just girdle it and then double girdle it, it'll kill the tree. And we tried that, and the girdling doesn't always work. The tree still lives, so you have to use the herbicides to do that. So again, even if you girdle them, the tree may not die. You're still gonna have to use the herbicides. Gabe's tackle box. I hunt on a pipeline, and I want to plant to bow hunt. What do I need to plant and how to? It's a long question to answer, but first you got to determine if that pipeline gets enough sunlight. If it doesn't get enough sunlight, I don't care what you plant, it's not going to grow. Second thing is you need to do a soil sample to figure that out. Most likely your soil is going to be pretty acidic. After that, you do those two things and you figure out where your pH is, and you want to decide to add the lime and the fertilizer and things. Good, depending on what state you're in, you plant annuals on there. Annual clovers would be very beneficial. In the fall, you could do winter wheat mixed with clovers again. It just really depends. There's a lot of options. And how do you do it? Well, that's too long of a question to answer. There's a lot of videos on YouTube, other channels, my channel, whatever. You can search how to plant a food plot. I think I have a series on YouTube, how to plant a food plot for beginners. If you just search that into the YouTube search bar, I think all those videos or playlists will pop up, and I kind of run down step by step on how to do it. Hopefully that helps. Is soybeans a good option to plant for my food plot? Maybe. It really depends. Most cases, probably not, because again, most times you can't plant enough soybeans to sustain the amount of browse pressure that the deer are going to put on them. So if your goal is just to plant them in the spring and have a little, summer crop, if you can get those established, past the second leaf, or even if you put electric fence around them, a lot of times that'll get them established long enough for 30 days or so. Then you can take that fence down. The deer most times can't wipe them out. Now, I would only recommend that, really, honestly, if you're able to plant 2, 3, 4 acres, because I've seen it to where guys that plant, especially in areas that have a high, deer herd, they're going to wipe you out. The soybeans can't keep up. And a lot of times, soybeans is a big fail. I did a test 2 years ago. I planted 3 acres of soybeans mixed with a little bit of sunflowers, and I fenced them off for roughly 40 days. They got established, whatever it was, 18 inches tall or so. Took that fence down and let the deer have at them, and they couldn't wipe it out. That was about 40 days fenced off, and they couldn't wipe them out. And then I knew that obviously I wanted to plant something else for the fall, so I just came back in and worked those soybeans back up, and then I planted my fall plot. But again, soybeans are another one of them, glamour crops where everybody wants to plant them. But the thing is, do you really need to plant soybeans? If you're not planting acres and acres and acres and acres of soybeans, how much benefit are you really going to have, or impact, are you going to have on that deer herd? Most hunters, I'd say on average, are only planting, a quarter acre or a half acre. And I have no idea how big your food plots are, but I'm just saying, soybeans, just because one person plants them or it's a glamour crop doesn't mean it's the best fit for you. And most times it's probably not. 5T Outdoors, what's up, man? If I clear the woods out for a plot, should I burn all the trees or just leave them around the edges? I have a small dozer, so I can do either. I would not leave the trees around the edges. Sometimes that actually blocks. It can block where the deer come in, and I've seen it to where it actually can spook them. It just really depends on the area. I think I see some guys that leave big brush piles and stuff around a food plot, and then all of a sudden I actually had a guy email me a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, I cleared this food plot out, and I left brush piles around it, this, and this." This was last year, sorry. And I said, "Your best bet, is to get rid of those brush piles." And he's like, I don't know if that's it, but the deer just aren't hitting my food plot like I want them to. So he emailed me a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, I removed those brush piles this past season, and I had all kinds of deer in my food plot." So I think it does have an impact on the deer entering that food plot. Also, it doesn't leave areas for predators and things to get in. But I think it really depends on the area, because I know people that have left brush like that around a food plot, and it has like no impact. Starting tradition outdoors. What's up, man? Hey, Dave. I got an acre food plot of clover. It's been clover for 2 years. Should I change it up this year, or should I make it bigger and put different kind of food source? Clover, I mean, you can get several years out of a clover food plot. I guess the couple things to ask yourself is, are the deer really hammering your food plot? Does clover make sense? Clover's pretty much a basic thing to plant, where a general, rule of thumb across the board, where all the deer are going to eat it. So ask yourself that, hey, I got 2 acres, an acre food plot of clover. Are the deer hammering it? Is it really benefiting me to have this clover food plot? I don't know what state you're in. I can't really remember, but in the fall, that clover a lot of times is going to go dormant. So if that's the only food plot that you have, and depending on what state you're in, it may not be the best bet for the fall food plot, because that clover is going to start to lose attractability. I was, hunting central Pennsylvania for a long time, and that clover would be very, very attractive up until around second week of November. After that, it was like a light switch would go off, and the deer would not hit that clover anymore. It's because it gets cold, and the clover starts to lose its attractability. It starts to go dormant. It's a dormant time of year for that. So just think about that. Belinda, hey. Hey, Dave, love your common sense input on food plots and habitat. Thank you, Belinda. Appreciate that. Dave, what's up, man? Long time. Yes, sir. Been a long time. How you been? Whitetail's up. Dave, do you believe in supplemental feeding now through late spring? Well, it depends. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of supplemental feeding. It can work, but I see a lot of people that, because it's wintertime, all of a sudden, hey, I got to supplement the deer because they need my help. Well, a deer really doesn't need your help. And a lot of times whatever, I don't know what you're supplemental feeding with. If it's corn, probably not the smartest idea. If say it's a 50-50 mix of corn and roasted soybeans, probably not still not the best bet, but it can help a little bit. But a lot of times I see people dumping out a 10-pound bag of pellets or something, and they say, "Oh, I'm feeding the deer." No, you're not really helping the deer with a 10-pound bag of pellets. A lot of times those pellets and things, they have all kinds of binders, made out of wood, and they're not very digestible to the deer, and they basically they just poop them out. When they eat those pellets, they don't really stick to the ribs of that deer. They just poop them right out. There's controversial things about supplemental feeding with pellets and different things like that. I don't really believe in that. I think it's one of them things where, again, if it's something that you believe in and you do it year after year after year, you stay on that routine, it may have some benefit. To me, it's just not worth it. You're spending whatever it is for a bag of pellets, and you're putting out corn and this and this and this and this. Deer really don't get bigger by that. A deer, think about what a deer do before our time. We didn't feed them. We didn't dump stuff in a bag out for the deer. There was monster deer kill way before we were ever around. It's deer feed on that habitat. That's how deer get bigger. They really don't need our help with pellets, and supplemental feeding them. Now, if you're referring to a supplemental food plot, if you have a great food plot program through the fall and winter, that's the proper way to supplement their diet, is through that and through habitat work, creating fresh browse and woody browse, because that is what deer live on. That is what they do. It's natural browse. It's what they transition to. It's deer supplement their self through the habitat in the wintertime, right? To increase that food, you have to increase the habitat, the production of the habitat by, closed canopy forest. You open up that sunlight, and I get it. Most people are leasing land. They're just hunting small properties, and they can't, cut trees and things like that. And if, you can plant a legit food plot, such as winter wheat, leading into the fall, into the winter months, you can really supplement their diet like that. If you want to use something to, feed them, I think corn and a 50-50 mix of corn and roasted soybeans. Roasted soybeans are high in protein, some fat, and things like that. That could be a good option for you. Me personally, I don't do that. I focus more on the habitat. It works for some people, I guess. What's up, Kyle? I'm in Virginia. I was wondering if the different planting times for winter rye, winter wheat, and peas affect the outcome. Typically, I don't care what state anybody is in. Obviously, it's going to depend a little bit. But when you're planting, for instance, winter wheat, winter rye, you really only need to plant that about 30 to 45 days before your average first frost. That's all you got to do. If you plant it too soon, too early before your frost, a lot of times deer aren't going to touch it. It gets too mature, and it becomes more like woody and stemmy. So the deer aren't going to hit it as hard. If you focus more on closer to that frost, 30 days, 40 days, something like that, it's still palatable and tender. You have tender plants and palatable plants leading into your hunting season. That's when you want your food plot to be attractive, right? When you want your food plot working for you when it's actually bow season. So don't go by dates on the bag or what month it is, or hey, it's September 1st and I got to plant my food plot. No, go by, look at your time, look at your state, your area, and say, okay, I get a frost typically by end of October or October 15th, and then backtrack 30 days, plant your food plot. I'm late to the show here. Southwest Iowa. What's up, buddy? What's this? Brian. Have you seen research from Texas about food plots that are only lip high? They claim parasites live in the lip high zone and will reduce a buck's potential by as much as 15 inches versus a taller plot. I have not seen that research. Having parasites, I can agree to that. I guess I have no data on that. But I do know that a lot of times, in those areas like that where the food is limited, deer, or especially in areas where people are using those minerals, you're dumping the minerals in the ground, and you're forcing that deer to eat dirt that is not natural. When they're just taking large chunks of dirt, mixed with that mineral, that is not natural. You can have parasite issues like that. Yeah, but I have not seen that research. Thanks for taking the time to answer and clarify. I appreciate it. I have to sign off, so thanks again. No problem. Western North Carolina. Okay. What was his question? I'd like to plant fall food plots. Spring, summer, fall food plots. What do you recommend plant in my neck of the woods? And you are in North Carolina. So for your food plot, I would plant, you would do very well with buckforage oats in North Carolina. Buckforage oats would be very palatable to the deer in the fall. Springtime, depending how big your plot is, what's around, if you really need to plant a spring and summer food plot, you could look into buckwheat would be good. Some annual clovers would be good. But I think for that fall plot, what would be very beneficial to you would be some buckforage oats and even winter wheat mixed in with that. That would help you out a lot, I think. Talked about covered canopy. I sure got that. Yeah, it's pretty common. You get that overstory, and it just doesn't allow any sunlight into the ground, and you lack food on those properties that don't have sunlight. I've noticed over the last 3 years the coyote population has exploded, and deer numbers have dropped in my area. Yeah, I mean that happens a lot in areas. You gotta start busting the coyotes, keep them in check. Nick, what about winter rye? You can plant winter rye. I plant it sometimes. I'm not a huge fan of winter rye. It works good. We got a call coming in here, but winter wheat is my go-to. Hello. Hello. All right. I guess they didn't want to talk. But yeah, winter wheat is my go-to because winter wheat tends to be a little bit more palatable to the deer. If you take a bite of winter wheat and winter rye, you can taste the difference. The rye is a little bit bitter compared to the wheat. They've done, I think QDMA did a study on this between the wheat and the rye, and it was determined that the wheat was more palatable to the deer than the rye. I'm not 100% sure on that, but from my own personal, experience, the wheat has been the go-to for attractability wise. They say like the rye, can grow in, lower pH soils and this and this and this. Well, wheat does too. Rye would be like the last resort, that I would go to. If I couldn't get wheat somewhere, then I would plant winter rye. Not ryegrass, but winter rye green. I would plant that as a last resort. My next would be winter wheat, just because I planted them side by side. Hello, you're live.
Yeah, hi, how are you? I'm from Illinois. Have you heard anything about COVID being in the deer that we eat? The COVID-19?
Yeah, I read something about it like a month ago. I can't remember what the study was, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
Well, what do you think about that? I mean, is it safe to eat the deer, or you just take a chance?
I don't know. I'm not a biologist, or so I don't know. But to me, I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to eat them anyway.
Okay, thanks. I love your show. Thanks. First time I'm listening to it. Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, bye.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that, but now they say, deer can get COVID. I don't know. Crazy. Eastern North Carolina, what's up? What's up? Boys, man, this thing is hurting my ear. What is the best quarter acre plot to plant in Tennessee? Buck forage oats. Jeff has some property in Kentucky, not far from Tennessee line, and that's pretty much the go-to for the fall is the oats and wheat, and they hammer the wheat and the buck forage oats. So I think that would be beneficial for you. Just keep in mind that the buck forage oats can get frosted out. So if you're in a cold area, you've got everybody listening. If you're in a cold area, buck forage oats can get frosted out. A better option would be the wheat or the rye. It's more cold hardy than the oats. Still, yeah, same thing. Oats would be good for you. My neighbor feeds deer during hunting season and never hunts them. What's the best way to bring them to me? It's hard to say. I mean, what are they feeding them? You could do the same thing. Feed them on your land and bring them to you. You could catch them, going to your neighbors that's feeding them. You can hunt, that wherever they're coming from and going to, you can hunt that travel route to them. You can, keep your property to a minimum amount of pressure so the deer are on your land, improve the habitat, have more woody browse, create a food plot. There's lots of stuff to do that can help, but you just kind of have to look at that and try to figure out where the deer are coming from, going to that neighbor that's feeding them, try to hunt that intersection there. Improve your woods, work on the woods if you can, or bait them as well. Whatever they're using, double it up, put more than they're putting out, put something better out, go from there. Chasing the outdoors with Tanner Goozy. What's up, buddy? Winter rye, oats, or wheat? What is the best winter crop? In areas that are warmer, climates that are warmer, oats are going to be better. They're going to be more attractive. You have a palatability standpoint between those three. Oats are going to be your most palatable. Then it's your wheat, then your rye. Temperature wise, if you're in a warmer area that doesn't get hard frosts, then oats, buck forage oats, don't buy farm oats. Them things are junk. Buy buck forage oats. Those are going to be your best bet. In the colder climates where you get more frost, harder frost, then wheat and rye are going to be your better option. So to say what's best out of those three, well, oats are best for palatability wise, but for cold hardy wise, the wheat and rye is going to be your go-to. If I got my lime down, woohoo, Ron. Can't wait to try out the Grow Buck liquid. I'm going to put 50% fertilizer requirements. Very nice. Yeah, it's good stuff. Especially with granular fertilizer costs this year, it's going to be insane. A lot of people aren't going to be able to use or buy fertilizer because of the cost of them. Of the fertilizer. So a lot of people have been asking about liquid fertilizer because it's cheaper. So you can still do that, 30 to 50%, granular fertilizer, cut down your granular fertilizer costs at planting and then come back in for their feed, or you can just say, screw it and just do all liquid fertilizer. Whatever's cheaper, for you to do. Western North Carolina, I forgot to mention that I put winter rye in the plot too. They are there every evening. I'm thinking about putting out winter wheat in the extended part of the food plot. Yeah, you can do that. A lot of times you can take those clover plots and just overseed, into them. I did that this past season, I had an established perennial clover food plot. I came back in and just broadcasted some brassicas into that portion, and they came up good. Obviously, not going to be as good as if it's just a straight stand of brassicas, but they came up. I also broadcasted some winter wheat into that as well. And I'm going to get these questions leading into spring, so I'll answer them now. Anybody that plants, say if you have a perennial clover plot and you're planting clover into that, or wheat into that, that wheat is going to come back in the spring. How do you kill that? Well, you're going to have to mow that a few times or wait until that wheat gets tall enough into that dough stage. Then you can mow that. It'll kill it off. The guys that like to use herbicides, then once spring green up is here, you can go through, herbicide it, kill off the wheat, and you'll be good to go. I try to steer away from that. I'll just end up mowing it, but either one of those will work. I have a lot of farmers couldn't cut all their corn this year. Way too wet. The deer are enjoying it big time. That's good. Can you hack and squirt cedar? Got some cedar glades that I would like to open up the canopy. They're too big for me to feel safe felling. If so, what chemical should I use? You can hack and squirt cedars. I've done that. As far as the chemical use, I'm not an expert on what chemical to use for the hack and squirt. If you just simply Google search that, it'll tell you. There's many different chemicals that you have to use per species of tree. I know some people you can just use glyphosate. Sometimes you can use a glyphosate 2,4-D mix. Some people use glyphosate and diesel fuel, can work well as well into that, and it'll kill those cedar trees. But if you just Google that, it'll tell you exactly what chemical to use. Gabe's talking about, is ryegrass good for food plots? No. Thumbs down on that. They're not good for food plots. Thanks, Dave, for all the answers. Don't forget, boys, to subscribe for monthly access. What's up, buddy? Thank you. But also, if you cook it, it'll kill anything in the deer. True. I don't really worry about the COVID in the deer or CWD or whatever it is. Cook it, it'll be good to go. Jason Outdoors Tanner Goosey, can you blend oats and wheat? 100% you can. Absolutely. Keep in mind, again, everybody listening with mixing the wheat and oats. If you're in a warmer climate and you don't get hard frosts, you can use more oats compared to the wheat ratio. If you're in a colder climate, you can still mix the two, but cut back on the oats compared to the wheat, because the reason being is those oats are going to get frosted out. So then you would lose some of your volume tonnage in that food plot because the oats are going to fade out. So cut back on those oats a little bit and add more wheat to that if you're in a colder climate. Hope that makes sense. Norman, what's up, man? What do you suggest to plant in my plots for deer and turkeys for all season long? From Norman. Love watching your show. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. An all around good food plot for deer and turkeys is clover. You cannot beat clover. A perennial clover plot will not only attract deer and feed deer for many months out of the year, you'll also attract the turkeys. And, a lot of times, in those clover food plots, when those early mornings, say during turkey season starts, you get these early mornings, you get that heavy dew in there on those plants, and you get the sun comes out and you get a lot of those bugs in there. The turkeys will come into that clover plot and they'll be in there bugging. They'll be eating all the bugs. It's on from the dew and everything. they'll be eating those bugs, they'll be eating the clover heads, and all that. Turkeys love clover plots, especially when it gets up, 10 inches high or so. They'll be in there hammering them, and you'll be good to go. But I would say that would be your all around food plot to benefit turkeys and deer. I love a perennial clover plot. It's one of my favorite things to plant. You maintain that sucker just by adding some fertilizer before they're feeding it or whatever it is. But if you can maintain that clover food plot, thing is awesome. Keep it mowed a couple times a year, keep the weeds down in it, and it can be a powerful attraction to your property. Let's see. Zach White, what's up, man? The deer are bedding on his property. Okay, this is the neighbor that was baiting deer. The deer are bedding on his property, eating and water on his property. I feed them, and they come check me out every other day, most of the time. Yeah, again, it's one of them situations where if they're bedding on his property, then create bedding on your property, make them bed on yours. Feed them on your property. Put bedding, food, water, cover on your property. Make them to where your property is the go-to. Provide something that your neighbor doesn't have, to attract them that way. David Phillips, what would work for fairly wet clay? You can get away with some clovers in that situation. For summertime, you could do buckwheat would be good. You could probably get away with that. And then for the fall, I would be looking at wheat or rye, probably in that situation, probably rye. There are times I use rye. There's times I use wheat. There's times I use both. But rye would probably be your best situation for that, Dave. Most of my plots this year are a cereal grain annual clover blend. Would Brassica be a good follow-up next year? If so, should I plot be split half brassicas and half blend? Annual clover, what brassicas? Yeah, I mean brassicas would be a good crop as well. Sorry, I'm looking at my phone. I thought a call was coming in. Would be a good crop to plant again if it's a large enough food plot. I wouldn't split the plot half brassica, half blend or whatever. I wouldn't split that if depending how big that plot is. If you're trying to bow hunt it, for instance, I wouldn't split it. I would keep that whole thing a brassica blend. I would plant your brassicas. You can plant some clovers in with that as well. You can come back in and broadcast some winter wheat into that. You can even plant it a light amount during planting as well. You can come back in and overseed it, but I wouldn't split the plot. I would keep it all the same within that same area. Got to sign off. Thanks for your wealth of knowledge, Dave. #AntlerGrow. Thanks, man. I'll see you on the next one. Salty Lemon. Hey, man, I really love your channel. I was just wondering what type of fencing I should use to protect tomatoes from squirrels. I have heard Harry Cox fencing is the best option, but I wanted to hear you first. Honestly, I don't really have a good answer for you for that. Any kind of electric fence is going to work if you can wrap those put a cage around that tomato plant and then put a electric fence around it. But you're going to have to use, typically for like a deer fence, you have one up here and one down low. That when they come up to it, they're the fence is hitting their chest. In that situation, like I would imagine, you're going to have to use lots of strands, especially low at a squirrel's level. You have to put a bunch of strands there to where if they come into it, it shocks them. But as far as, that specific situation, that's the only thing I can really think of. Steel Panther. I had between 7 to 9 does last year on my property and only seen 2 bucks show up. Should I bother shooting a doe for a couple of years, or okay to take one next season? Absolutely. If you have that many does, you can shoot some. It's not going to hurt nothing. I wouldn't wipe them all out. But 1 or 2 or 3 or something, it's not going to hurt anything, because you got to think those deer, whatever, whether having 1 or 2, per doe, that's going to increase your doe population the following year. So yeah, shooting 1 or something, not going to hurt nothing. Everyone likes the video. Milk Dud. When should I start making a food plot for next season? Well, depends. Do you have to clear out woods, trees, to open up sunlight? If you have an area where you're in an area that don't have no snow, or even if you have snow, you want to get in there and, you got to cut some trees down to open up the canopy, because you got to have sun for plants to grow. So now would be a good time to go in there, cut those trees, drop them. If you have some snow or whatever. If you don't have snow, then you can drop them, pull them out of there, get them away from the food plot, get them out of there. Some other things you can start doing, working on food plots, you can do soil samples. One of the most important things, soil samples and sunlight. Do a soil sample now. Address the lime pH situation. Throw some lime in there and get that rolling. Let that lime start working its magic. Other than that, you still have several months before you have to start planting something. If it's a small food plot, you're in ag country, they're planting soybeans, if it's a 1/4 acre food plot or something, you may not want to plant something to where you're actually, trying to feed the deer. Maybe you should try to plant something to try to just improve that soil, such as buckwheat. Buckwheat's a good soil amendment to add to your food plot program. It just really depends, because I see a lot of people, wanting to plant a spring and summer food plot because they think that they need to feed the deer. Well, each area is going to be different. Again, if you're in ag country situation and they're planting soybeans, I always use this example. If you're planting soybeans and whatever it is, alfalfa, whatever it is, and here you are with a little 1/8 acre, 1/4 acre food plot, and you're trying to plant soybeans or whatever it is to try to feed that deer, really consider, okay, what is my 1/4 acre food plot really going to do to that deer herd when they're out there feeding on all those soybeans? Think about that. Now, if you have a property that is, you have tons of acres to plant food plots, even in ag country. Okay, there's a lot of people that say, oh, you can't compete with ag. Well, yeah, you can. Most farmers aren't liming, they're not fertilizing, they're not using micronutrients. I guarantee I can compete with a manicured farmer that's working on his property. I guarantee it. So if you have those large food plots on your property, then yeah, go ahead and plant something to try to feed them, because you're going to benefit them, even if they have that ag and soybeans. Now, if you're in an area that just has corn, that's all they plant is corn, then that corn's not going to provide any nutrition throughout the spring and summer. And go ahead and plant your food plot to try to give them a little boost. Each property, each situation is different. Your deer on your property, something 15 minutes, 20 minutes down the road could be completely different setup. Deer could look sick, skinny, not enough food, clothes can't be far. It just really depends on the area. Lance, I hunt in river bottom area mixed with pines. I can't cut it or kill trees, but there is a few areas I can plant in some thin stands of oaks with 4 hours of sunlight. Can I plant clovers in those areas? 4 hours of sunlight is probably good enough to plant clovers. You could probably get away with that pretty good. For the fall, though, some shade tolerant things would be your winter wheat, winter rye. Even oats can do okay. But I'll give you a tip here, Lance, if you're still listening, is you say it gets 4 hours sunlight. Okay. Plant something, in the spring or whatever. If that plant grows, a lot of people don't notice when you plant something, okay, and there's wooded areas, say it grows 3, 4, 5 inches tall, and you get a heavy wind or heavy dew or rain or something, and that plant just flops over, just lays flat on the ground. It's because you don't have enough sunlight. It can't chase the sun. And I learned this years ago. I planted a food plot a long time ago, and I had this happen. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? The plants grew. I came in like a couple weeks later. I'm like, man, this looks great. Green carpet. And then all of a sudden it rained, and all the plants, the roots barely had a root system, and it just flopped over. It's because it can't chase the sun. It doesn't have those sun to create a strong root system. So you develop heavy tops and a weak root system. So when you do get that wind or rain or whatever, it just flops right over. So that's the biggest issue. So anybody that's planting food plots in those wooded areas, if you see that, that's what it is. I actually saw a post on Facebook last year. A guy had that problem, and I actually messaged him. I said, hey, it was in a Facebook group or something, food plot group. I just messaged him. I said, hey man, like I know your problem, with the plant falling over. Here's what it is. And he was grateful for it or whatever. Said thanks. And I said, hey, by the way, can I use your pictures? Because he had pictures of it. The plant just laying flat on the ground. I said, hey, can I use these pictures? I want to make a video about it, because I don't have this issue anymore, because I've learned from that from years ago. So I want to make a video about it. So I used his pictures as an illustration in the video, and it was beneficial to a lot of guys. Matthew, I blasted a coyote and doe this morning after church here in New York and got videos on my shot cam. Should I post the vids? Sure. Post them up, man. Everybody likes coyote hunting. That'd probably be pretty cool to see. Will deer feed on the ears of corn if left standing all winter long? Yeah, they'll feed on them. They're not going to eat the cob. I don't think I've ever seen a deer eat a cob, but I mean, if there's corn left on there, they'll eat that. Eat that for sure. Raymond Fletcher, what's up, buddy? What trees should be removed in closed canopy forest? I'm in South Central Alabama. I don't know what trees you have, but a lot of situations depends if you have like a lot of maples, silver maples or whatever. You can get rid of those. Some hickories. You can even get rid of some oaks if you have too many. If you have cedars, get rid of some of the cedars. You want to eliminate all the trees, but you want to eliminate enough to where you allow enough sunlight. And the more sunlight you allow in, the more regrowth you're going to get from different species of plants and woody browse and forbs and grasses or whatever it is that's in that seed bank. But you don't want to eliminate all of one species. Have a situation where you have a balance between them all. Just look at the sunlight, take out the crooked ones. If you're looking for timber value, then you have to get a forester in there, can help you out with that to determine what the high dollar trees are. But in general, you're going to eliminate those crooked, dead, some cedars, maples, whatever it is, beech. All those would be beneficial to get rid of. All right, we're caught up on questions. All right, I'll probably go for another couple minutes. Anybody has last minute questions, last minute phone call, you want to call, whatever. Probably go for like another 5-10 minutes or something, and then we're gonna get off. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we got a lot of followers tonight. Like I said, I haven't did this in a long time, so I'm to catch up back with you guys. I like answering your questions. So, any questions you guys have, fire away for the next couple minutes, and we'll do another one of these here in the next few weeks or so. If you guys enjoyed, let me know in the comments after the video's over or live. If you enjoyed this type of setup, we can do more of these in the future. Got a call. Hello, you're live.
Hey, Dave, who's your woodsman here?
Hey, what's up, buddy?
I was trying to figure out what would be the best fall, winter, spring, and summer food plots.
What state you in?
Hey, Dave, who's your woodsman here? Hey, what's up, buddy? I'm trying to figure out what would be the best.
Can you turn your background off? Sound?
Yeah, so
Okay. What state are you in?
Indiana.
Indiana. How big are your plots?
I got one that's quarter acre and another one that's a half acre, and I'm extending them out to an acre and probably a half acre.
Okay. Do you have a lot of ag around?
Not really. I got I think it's a 600 acre nature preserve that's behind the property.
Okay.
And there's probably like 60 miles in a circular area around me. I'm in big wooded country.
Big wooded country. Okay. In those bigger food plots, probably a good option for you is going to be either a annual clover, or if you want to establish a perennial clover plot. But clover is pretty much a go-to all around, all year long, sustainable food plot for deer and turkeys as well. You can look at that. If you need to improve that soil, a good option for you would be an annual such as buckwheat to help improve the soil. Leading into the fall, a really, really good option would be winter wheat or oats. And you can actually say you don't want to plant that perennial food plot. You can take some annual clovers or even perennial clovers and mix in with that fall food plot with your wheat and rye or oats. And that way you can establish a clover food plot that way leading into the next spring. On that 1 acre plot, you can even do brassicas. It really just depends on how many deer you have, within the area. You know your deer herd better than anybody. So if you feel like you have a lot of deer, be careful with brassicas because they can wipe you out. Brassica.
Yes,
they did wipe you out, brassicas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty common. In that situation, then I would focus more on your cereal grains such as wheat, oats, and rye.
All right. And how beneficial is 10-20-8 fertilizer?
Well, it can be beneficial depending on if it's needed. The only way to really know that is through a soil sample. So a lot of guys will just throw a certain fertilizer at a food plot, and it may not even need that. You may not even need, that type of fertilizer. So if you just do like a $14 soil sample, it'll tell you exactly the specific fertilizer you need, so you're not wasting money. You can actually, it might cost you $14 for the soil sample, but you may not be adding hundreds of dollars of fertilizer when you don't need it, especially this year because fertilizer cost is going to be through the roof.
Right. Awesome. Thank you much.
All right, no problem.
All right.
Bye. In the last 8 to 10 years, my neighbors and I only 8 points or better. It's really paid off. That's great. It can work. All your neighbors and everybody, working together. Have you ever turned a old pasture into a bedding area using switchgrass? Yeah, years ago. A lot of areas that I hunt don't have a lot of pasture and open fields such as that to convert, but we've done that on clients' properties and different places. Kentucky, we did that, and all that stuff. But a lot of times, switchgrass can be good if it's a really big area and you're trying to create, say, like an edge or something. But typically where I hunt, where I'm from, most of the time, like switchgrass just really isn't needed, and I would like to rotate my plots and things. So I just use Egyptian wheat. Don't get a lot of snow, it holds up pretty well. But yeah, to answer your question, yes. Just where I'm at personally, I don't really use a whole lot of switchgrass. Hey, is this video going to be posted on your channel? Yeah, it should be posted right after it's over here. Steel Panther, I've asked this before, but I've got an established electric feeder about 120 yards from the place I want to plant my food plot. Do I need to ditch it or leave it? Um, it's one of them things where feeders, I depending on the area, really, um, feeders I feel can do more harm than good. It's too risky to have an electric feeder out there and you're spooking the deer. The bucks, some people say, oh, well, I have bucks come to my electric feeder. Some people say, yeah, it spooks them. They only hit it at nighttime. Me personally, I'm not going to use them. I'm going to get rid of it, plant the food plot, get rid of that feeder. It makes it more of a safe feeling and attractive, to that buck, especially mature bucks. Now in areas that, you know, have a lot of feeders and they're used to it, and I think the biggest thing with that is pressure. Okay, if you have that feeder there and the deer are used to that noise, the spinner on there, and they're used to it, I feel like they can get, fairly used to it. It's when we humans interfere with that situation. It's when humans put the pressure on the deer, and then all of a sudden, quote unquote, they go nocturnal. Well, they're not really nocturnal; they're just somewhere else, right? So it's human pressure that we put on that. So if you're constantly hunting on that feeder situation, even a food plot, if you're hunting on your food plot or on that feeder, and the deer know you're there, guess what? You're going to turn that food plot, you're going to turn that feeder into a nocturnal situation, or they may not use it at all. Humans' encounters with those deer is what really messes everything up. It really does. Tom, your recommendation on best company or manufacturer of seed blends to use for food plots, specifically clovers and brassicas, etc. Just getting started on plots, and I could use some expert advice. Tom, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of good companies out there that have good seed blends. Um, what I can tell you is that a lot of times when you're buying, depending how big your plots are, sometimes those specialty blends, that are from small food plot companies that offer, blends for deer, sometimes that may not be needed for you. In those larger situations, it might just be better for you to go to your feed store and you're buying 50-pound bags of wheat, oats, and rye, because that's what it comes in. It comes in 50-pound bags. That's going to be your most cost-effective situation. I've used a lot of blends from different various companies over the years. I'm currently using specialty blends from Domain Outdoors. The reason I like them is because it's two guys that run it, Mike and Tim, and I like them. They have good blends where they don't have fillers in their seeds. So no matter what brand of seed that you use from a small, company, look at the mixes. If it has ryegrass in there, run. Don't use that company. There's a lot of companies that put ryegrass in there because it's a filler seed, and it's a high percentage. If you look at the seed label on the back of the seed, it gotta have a seed label. You'll see a really high percentage of ryegrass, and that's not a good blend. It's cheap. It's grass seed, so they put it in there in these like throw and grow mixes, and ryegrass will grow anywhere. So the consumer, we buy that, we put it out, it grows, you see green come up, and you think that you did good because it's green. Well, it's just ryegrass. It's no good. So no matter what you use, you look at the seed label and see if it makes sense for your area. Also, Domain has they have some mixes now that have hybrid brassicas in them. So where, like I mentioned earlier in this live stream, I don't know about how long you've been listening, but brassicas, when a deer takes a bite of that brassica, it's not growing back. right? So there's small food plots. A deer can wipe that brassica plot out pretty quick. Domain has hybrid brassicas to where a deer takes a bite, it's going to regrow, right? I think they've done tests on it or whatever. They can regrow up to like 4 times throughout that growing season. So obviously, if it gets frost, then it's not going to regrow. You know what I mean? It's going to go dormant. But throughout that growing season, those hybrids, there's a lot of hybrids out there now. It can get you through, the season to help keep up with the browse pressure. Makes sense? So, but again, I'm not telling you to buy a specialty blend from anybody. Just see if that makes sense for your application. You may just be better off buying, a bag of winter wheat. I think a 50-pound bag of winter wheat's like $14. Prices this year, I'm sure everything's going to be higher, but in general, I think it's around 14, 16, 12, somewhere around that area. And it could be more, could be less. But that's what I'm using. You don't have to use that. There's a lot of good companies out there. You guys give Whitetail a thumbs up. Thank you. Plants. I planted brassica plants here in southeast Texas. They hit the radishes okay. Kind of hit the turnip and left the Winford. Wasn't touched. It grew amazing. Is it possible they don't know it? Brassicas are kind of one of the things where they're a little bit finicky for deer. But that's why it's good. A lot of times I have a blend of brassicas, different ones, because they can pick and choose what they like and don't like. And then it'll also give you a clue whether you should continue to plant that or don't continue to plant it. Sometimes it takes a couple of years for the deer to get used to them. If they're in an area that doesn't plant anybody, your neighbors and stuff aren't planting brassicas. Another situation with this is I see this a lot, and they say, "Oh, deer aren't touching my brassicas." Well, a lot of times, what happens is people plant them too early in the summer. Okay, brassicas only need to be planted roughly about 50 days or so, 40 days, something like that, before your average frost. When you plant them too early in the summer, deer aren't hitting them, and by the time hunting season rolls around, they get too mature and too woody, too stemmy. It's like, chewing to deer would be like chewing on, a really tender piece of lettuce as a young plant compared to when that thing matures out, and then all of a sudden it's like chewing on like a piece of cardboard. What are they going to choose? They're going to choose the tender piece of lettuce, right? So that's how you have to look at it. And I think this whole thing with brassicas, people growing them early in the summer is because, if you plant it early in the summer, then yeah, you're going to get these giant brassica bulbs by hunting season rolls around. And then everybody goes on social media, takes pictures of these giant bulbs, and they say, "Oh, look at this bulb I grew." Well, what good is that bulb being the size of a basketball? What good is it that being that big when the deer's not eating it? What good is it? It's not benefiting the deer. It's just making you take a cool picture. So plant them at a reasonable time frame to where you get medium-sized bulbs and they're not too mature and the deer are still eating them. What do you think they're going to choose? Eating one that's a size of a basketball? I'm exaggerating, but the size of a basketball compared to one that's the size of a baseball. Probably going to go for the one that's a baseball compared to the basketball. All right. Been on there almost an hour and a half longer than I kind of wanted, but I'm gonna hop off. Thank you guys for watching. Had a lot of people tonight. Appreciate that. Hopefully you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new, and we'll do another one of these here in the next few weeks or so. Let me know how you enjoyed it. After it's over, drop a comment. Hope you guys have a great week, and some videos coming out this week as well. And we'll schedule another one of these, in the next few weeks. I think it was good. So have a good week, guys. I'll see you on the next video, and take care. Be safe.